Hey, it's that time where the Pittsburgh Steelers take on the Philadelphia Eagles, a Keystone State matchup. It's coming in tomorrow at Lincoln Financial Field at 4:25 p.m. Eastern. This should be a good game. The Pittsburgh Steelers are coming in 10-3, first place in the AFC North on a two-game winning streak. They've won 7 of their last 8. The Eagles are 11-2 and won 9 in a row and are on top of their division as well in the NFC East. This should be a keystone matchup of 2 first place in the division teams and a matchup that I'm looking very much forward to. I know that the Steelers are kind of limping in a little bit. Some players have gone down, and we'll get into that. This is not going to be a cakewalk whatsoever. This is going to be a very tough game for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see what's going to happen. First, before we get into it, let's talk a little bit about last week's game. Not too much, but Steelers go in, take care of business against the Cleveland Browns. And, I think if you go back to my prediction, I was pretty close. I think I said like 27-13 or something like that, and end up being 28-14, the game margin of victory there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the one thing that I want to take away from that is the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers were victorious even without George Pickens. George Pickens had been out just recently, right before that game. He was a game-time decision. Now he's not going to be playing in this game against the Philadelphia Eagles either. But last week, it was very similar to like when it was 2 different types of positions. But remember when Ben Roethlisberger gets pulled out right before the Lions game during the COVID season? And Mason Rudolph went in there and ended up being in a tie. They just, obviously I don't think it was his fault. I think there was a lot of fumbles in that game. Regardless of that, the team just kind of seemed a little bit off, especially earlier on in the game. And I think that's kind of what happened in this game. I think that the plan was maybe to feature George Pickens. And when he's not in there and can't play in the game, then that plan needed to be adjusted. And so soon to play, to the time of play, I'm not surprised that there was a little bit of a build-up for that game as far as performance and them going, to finally get kind of hot towards the end of the game. This week against the Eagles, they have a full week to prepare, knowing they didn't have George Pickens. And so I'm expecting to see even a better outcome from the wide receivers and the offense in this game as far as now they have something to plan for. Let's just hope they don't get too conservative without them. That's the one thing that I'm worried about when it comes to this. No, not this game in general, but like in some games with the Pittsburgh Steelers, if they have a matchup, they tend to, that maybe doesn't favor them. They just kind of stick to the run. And without George Pickens, I just hope that's not the case. I hope we're not seeing 2nd down and 9 and rushing attempts on 2nd down and 9 or pitch outs to Najee Harris. That's going to be one way the Pittsburgh Steelers lose if they continue to. If they do that and in this game, they cannot get predictable in this game. But I digress. Steelers 10-3. They have a 2-game lead against the Baltimore Ravens. So I know a lot of people are going to ask, like, how important is this game? There's some key players that aren't playing in it. If this was the Ravens week, would they play? Maybe. Is it the fact that it's an NFC team and that it's the Eagles and you still have a 2-game lead against your division rival? And in reality, the next game is the one that counts the most, right? The next game against the Ravens is a big game. The Steelers win this game, they clinch a playoff spot, which is amazing. That's great. They win next week, they clinch the division. And I mean, that's the first step right now. I know everybody, including myself, we're pretty close up there to the Bills and to the Chiefs, and we still have to play the Chiefs. Or Steelers still have to play the Chiefs this year. So is there a possibility there that the Steelers can run the table and maybe get some help along the way? Buffalo Bills play the Lions this week, so that's not a sure victory whatsoever. And given how that matchup with the or how that race for first place between them and the Eagles is going, they're going to be in their top game. Is it possible that they lose a game? I think that's possible. The Chiefs, they have been very lucky, whether it's blocked field goals, missed field goals, or doinking in their own field goals and getting favorable calls and things of that nature. Their offense hasn't been what it was. Now, they did activate Hollywood Brown I don't think he's going to play this week, but I'm sure we're going to talk about him, come Christmas time, because I definitely believe he's going to play in that week. Uh, but I digress about them. So they have the opportunity to probably lose a game just because like I said, they've gotten lucky, and they offensively they're not the same. They're running the receiver group has been torn apart. I wouldn't be surprised. I know that Miami dropped Odell Beckham, and there's a lot of talk there that perhaps the Steelers are going to go out there and sign him. Just allow GP to rest George Pickens. I don't think so. I don't know if that's the move. I mean, he's only got 9. Sorry about that. He's only got 9 receptions his entire this entire season for the Miami Dolphins. He's not been really productive for them. He's on the wrong side of 30 and has had some ACL injuries throughout his career. Is he the same? I doubt it. Is he going to be better than maybe perhaps what the Steelers have now? I don't know. I mean, the Steelers still can, continue to put out there the Scotty Millers, the Ben Skowronek players out there before Mike Williams. And Mike Williams was getting some play time with the Jets prior to his release. So I don't know. I don't know if the Steelers are going to pick him up and say, all right, you're automatically going to get on our, on this moving train. You're going to be wide receiver number 2, 1, whatever you think you are. And we're going to, revolve this offense around you. I don't think he's going to find that in Pittsburgh. Now, could he go to the Chiefs? That's a good possibility, because the Chiefs are pretty strung out there when it comes to the wide receiver group. But I digress. We'll talk more about them come Chiefs week. Back to the Eagles game. And so let's see. But yeah, so to me, in this situation here, I think that because this game isn't so as important, right? It's not, it's an NFC team and things like that. I think that's the reason why the Pittsburgh Steelers are resting a couple of players. Now, is that a move that we probably should have expected from Mike Tomlin in the past? I don't think so. Mike Tomlin's MO up to this point has always been do whatever it takes to win this next game, whatever it takes. And I think the reason now is because I think he recognized the fact that the teams he's had in the past couldn't afford to lose any games. They were going to be very close in 1-point games. And if they wanted to make a playoff push or even be in the playoffs whatsoever, they had to put their all into every single game. I think he has a little bit more comfort in knowing that if the Steelers go out there and drop a game like against the Eagles, that's not going to kill their season, that this team is strong enough to overcome that. And he's looking for the big prize this time, right? The Super Bowl. Before it was like, we just got to get in the dance. Now I think we know we're going to get in the dance. Yeah, we got our invitation, just with the stamp on it, ready to get mailed out. It's almost there. It's almost there. Once they get to the post office, it's it. Right. But we need so the Steelers going in at this approach, I think, is a little bit refreshing. I actually like it quite a bit, to tell you the truth. Planning for the future and thinking ahead. I think one of the times I remember something like this happening was a few years back. Henry from the Ravens, when he was with the Titans, there was a game where Mike Vrabel rested him for a week or so because he was dealing with a nagging injury. It wasn't so much that he couldn't play. He probably could, but he was saving him for the end of the season at that point, because he did have some sort of, bumps and bruises that were lingering a little bit longer than they probably were comfortable with. And they were okay with that, knowing that they were going to go to the playoffs and that they were going to be able to still give themselves an opportunity. And they realized that their best opportunity in the playoffs is going to be with their running back. And I think that's the same thing here. Our best opportunity in the playoffs is going to be with George Pickens. So all in all, I don't think the Steelers will end up signing Odell Beckham. By the time this goes out, I could be wrong. By the time this goes out, there's a good chance he may be a Steeler, and I'm completely wrong. It wouldn't be the first time I was completely wrong about something. Normally I'm not, but it wouldn't be the first time. But I digress. This is going to be a good game. I'm excited for it. All right. Well, let's break down the injury report for the Pittsburgh Steelers and for the Philadelphia Eagles. So we talked about George Pickens. He's going to be out. Who fills in that spot? Scotty Miller took a lot of those routes of George Pickens. And, I think a lot of people were kind of not necessarily shocked, but they were like, why Scotty Miller? He really hasn't gotten on the field. George is out. He's the first one up. He's I don't know if he's been dressed a handful of times. And, I think that it may have been Calvin Austin. However, he had his second concussion, possibly. I don't know. I mean, he came out of the protocol pretty quick, so maybe it wasn't a concussion. It did look kind of weird. The optics of it, to me, looked like it was a concussion when he was getting up and he looked a little woozy. But hey, I'm not a doctor, so if he went in there and he passed all the tests and if he was not concussed, even great, even better. But I think that if he was, and if there was some sort of caution behind it, maybe that's the reason why we saw a smaller amount of snaps for Calvin Austin in this past game that we're probably going to see a little bit more of in this game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Scotty Miller, I thought, did a lot better than I could have anticipated. That one pass down the sideline where he was able to keep his feet in bounds was phenomenal. And I think that the offensive passing game, once they started to figure out what the Browns were going to do to him, because there's two aspects of it, right? You have the aspect of your game plan with George Pickens, and you also have the aspect of planning against the Browns' game plan against you. Now, the Browns probably planned heavily for George Pickens to be in the game. And since he wasn't, their plans changed. And so now you have to play that chess game in the middle of the game, trying to figure out what the other team is doing and how their, plan of attack is against your now plan of attack as well. So, for coming in just like that, I think that now that they have a week to prepare, I think they've had probably maybe even a Mike Williams in that position, who I think I'd like to see. He's a bigger body guy. He's a contested catch receiver on the team. And, I think he showed that he can go up there and get the ball. He's a huge man. He's very tall, very built, very, stout. So I think he's going to be a weapon, especially in the red zone, but also in the deep pass game. He's going to force defenses to back up a little bit. That could help out the running game, but this is going to be a tough running defense that they're going to be going up against. Out also is Deshaun Elliott. Now, this one is big to me. Deshaun Elliott has been, in my opinion, defensive, maybe best free agent player that the Steelers have gotten since, Patrick Queen's a big one too. This year, their free agency offseason pickups were pretty great. But, I think Deshaun Elliott is a better pickup than what we got for Patrick Queen thus far. However, him not being in the game is huge. Deshaun Elliott has had quite a few turnovers, big plays. He went down with a hamstring. He's not going to play. DeMonte Casey is probably going to take majority of his snaps. I'm comfortable with Casey. I think that Deshaun Elliott is just a tier above Casey, but I'm comfortable with Casey. It's not like, going in from, Elliott and then, we have Russ Crockwell out there or something like that. It's going to be DeMonte Casey. I think Cam Sutton might play a little bit more of the safety role as well. He's experienced. He knows the defense. I'm concerned, but I'm not overly concerned as well. But I do think that when you have now a Deshaun Elliott and a George Pickens out, one key player on both sides of the ball, that's where my concern starts to increase a little bit. Questionable is going to be, another player out is going to be Larry Ogunjobi. He had a growing. He's going to be out as well. Man, I feel bad for Larry. Every year there's some sort of soft tissue issue with Larry. He always finds himself either not practicing or practicing very little, especially towards the end of the season, in and out of games. And I just hope he gets better. This season has been a bit of a concern when it's come to the soft tissue injuries, to be 110% honest with you. It's insane how many of the Steelers have gone through. But Martavius Adams could find himself back on the field, which would be huge if Larry Ogunjobi is going to be out. in my opinion, Martavius Adams, even though he's a little bit undersized, he gets pressure on the quarterback, and he does a pretty good job there stuffing up the run. When it comes to the Eagles, they only have one player out, and that's wide receiver Britton Convey. So they're coming in very healthy on the Philadelphia Eagles side. And that's one of the things that does concern me when it comes to this matchup is Steelers are limping a little bit. They've got some, they're fairly healthy. Alex Highsmith is back. But two players on one on each side that are very big contributors to each side of the aisle, so to speak. That's going to be huge. That's a huge blow for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think that they can still overcome that. Well, we're going to get into some storylines, into predictions here in a minute. Let's take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors. And welcome back to State of the Steelers. Thank you for sticking with us through the ad break. Well, as I mentioned before, there's going to be a couple of things to look out for in this game against the Steelers playing against the Philadelphia Eagles. We've got some storylines to go over. I'm going to talk about what the Pittsburgh Steelers need to do to win and become victorious in this game, and then I'll let you know what my prediction is at the end of the podcast. So without further ado, before we get into it, I want to remind you guys of our website, SteelCurrentNetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Also, while you're there, you can check out all the other podcasts. You can check out all the articles that are out there. But once you're done there, go check out our YouTube site, Steel Curtain Network YouTube channel, where I and Shannon Wyatt will be back on Monday live talking about the game afterwards. It's called the Steelers Hangover. You don't want to miss it. All right, without further ado, let's get back into it. So the biggest storyline and that I have here is, how are the Pittsburgh Steelers going to combat Saquon Barkley and the rest of the stars on the Philadelphia Eagles offense? Mike Tomlin mentioned it earlier this week that the last time that they saw Saquon Barkley was while he was a member of the New York Giants, and that their main focus was him. That they can't do that same type of thing here because you have the likes of the Jalen Hurts, who can get in and out, is mobile. You have A.J. Brown on the outside, who can take over games. In fact, he showed the Steelers how much of a game he can take over the last time the Steelers played them. It's been a difficult road there for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Saquon Barkley is going to be one of the biggest, I guess, X factors in this game. If the Steelers end up putting a lid on him, I think they have a really good opportunity to win this game. And, as I mentioned earlier, also at the top of the show, this is the end of a streak is also going to happen here. Russell Wilson has, I think he's 6-0 against the Philadelphia Eagles, 4-0 there at Philadelphia. He's 4-0 against teams that have the first-ranked NFL defense, including last year when he was a member of the Broncos. And so, he's been very successful with top-ranked defenses. He knows the game. He's a student of the game, has been a student for a long period of time. And I'm excited for what he's going to be able to bring because obviously the Steelers haven't won there since the 60s. And so one of these streaks is going to have to come to an end. Hopefully it's going to be the Philadelphia streak of winning in Philadelphia against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm hoping that streak ends and the Russell Wilson streak continues. But that's one of the storylines that we're going to look into is Russ, can Russ do this? And he's going to have one arm tied behind his back with George Pickens not out there. Which leads me to my next point here is the wide receivers are going to need to step up. Last week they were, we had the excuse saying that the offensive game plan maybe perhaps wasn't as sharp in the first half because George Pickens wasn't out there. He was a late scratch. It wasn't something that the Steelers were, projecting early on in the week. They had already done their, um, they had already, created their game plan, and the person that filled in for the most part for George Pickens was Scotty Miller. Now, I think there was two phases to that. There's a reason behind that. I think that one of the main reasons is because of the concussion that Calvin Austin may have suffered. Obviously, he wasn't in the protocol for a very long period of time, so I'm not even sure he had a concussion. Given the fact that he had no designation going into the last game, and really after the first Wednesday, I think was the last time he had some sort of designation. It was as a full participant, and then after that, he was a full go. No designation. However, I did feel like his snaps were a lot less in this game versus in other games in the past. And so, is it possible we're going to see more Calvin Austin in this game? I think so. I do think that what Scotty Miller did was admirable. It was pretty good. I mean, the way he was able to get his feet in bounds, and he's real twitchy, pretty quick. Smaller receiver, but very quick. And he was able to get open and make the catch that he needed to make. It was impressive, to see Scotty out there and perform at the level that he has with little to no reps. Especially in stadium reps. I feel that component of his ability to go out there and do that, it makes his performance even higher. Um, but I think the Steelers need to see somebody else out there. Maybe get a little bit of Mike Williams involved. Not saying that Scotty Miller can't be a part of the game plan. I think he absolutely can, but I think I'd like another bigger wide receiver out there that's going to be able to threaten down the field. That is going to loosen up maybe perhaps the amount of defenders that are going to be in the box going up against the run. If the Pittsburgh Steelers can, if the Eagles are going to try to, stack the box, try to, stop the run and make the Pittsburgh Steelers one-dimensional through the air, I think Russell Wilson is a very good quarterback for that. It's a big, huge loss not having George Pickens. And Mike Tomlin mentioned something about Mike Williams and that it was, just wait and see, something to that effect. We haven't seen everything yet. Kind of alluding that there might be a bigger possibility for more opportunity for Williams. He's been on the team for a while. I think this is going to be like his fifth week or so that he's been a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he should know the offense by now. I think it's time that the Steelers can create 18 plays, 15 plays with him in there, designated to him, and then execute maybe about 8 or 9 of them during the game to try to get him the ball. I think that would be a huge component if the Pittsburgh Steelers can pull something like that off. And once if they can get the Eagles defense to back up, I think that, we saw a very successful passing game to the running backs against the Cleveland Browns last week that I wouldn't mind seeing more of that. The guys, Najee and Jalen, the ball in their hand in open space, they can do some damage. And when we saw that last week, and I think that that's going to continue to this week. But the wide receivers are going to have to step up and all for this team to win. I mean, when you look at this game on paper, right, you can kind of see Andy Weidl's fingerprints all over on both sides. So this is going to be a matchup, in my opinion, that's going to be not necessarily like, mirror image teams, but pretty close. I mean, you got some teams that are being built by the trenches, have some mobile quarterbacks, have a threat on the outside as far as receivers go, and live and play with and live and die with the strength of their defense. This game is going to be one that's going to be a little bit, it's going to be hard. It's not going to be an easy game for anybody. I think the Steelers are going to be able to compete with this team. And I think that there isn't a team that the Steelers can't beat, out there. My concern is also going to be on the defensive side. Deshaun Elliott not playing is a huge component to this. Now, I know KZ, he's going to be able to come in there and pick up the reins a little bit. But, I mean, the impact that Deshaun Elliott has had this season with what he's been able to do as the other safety across from Minka Fitzpatrick is well known. I mean, it pops off the screen. You can see it. He is arguably And you can argue about it. Maybe perhaps the best safety on the team. Now, I think Minka Fitzpatrick, he needs to get some splash. I would love to see the splash start coming in now and continue through the playoffs. I would take that over not have any for the first part of the season, for majority of the season so far. Uh, but it would be nice to see something like that. I think KZ is going to be picked on. Cam Sutton may be a guy that we may end up seeing playing a larger role in the safety position, which means we may end up seeing a little bit more of Beanie Bishop, who's his snaps have gone down a little bit since Cam Sutton has returned. But just kind of given the fact that Elliott is out, I think there's going to be a rotation back there. And these guys are going to have to step up. And in order to do so, I think that's going to fall down on the pressure. The Pittsburgh Steelers outside linebackers are going to have to bring it. Alex Highsmith in his return last week, I thought was an excellent performance. What he was able to do and just stop the run and be out there and then, allow Nick Herbig to come in on those obvious passing downs and allow him to do what he does best is a great formula for success. And I think that for the Eagles, who are also a team that tends to get off a little bit slower, they take a little bit of time to heat up as well and to get going or to warm up. And if the Steelers can take advantage of those dull times while they're being, built up and they can create some turnovers, they got a shot. They definitely got a shot. And if they can make this team one-dimensional and make Jalen Hurts throw the ball, I think that's your best opportunity. If they have success with Saquon Barkley, they're going to continue to run the ball with Saquon, and it's not going to look good for the Steelers at any point. But again, like I was mentioning, this is a rushing attack by the Pittsburgh Steelers that has been good. It's been good. The 1-2 punch of Najee and Jaylen Warren has been good. The rushing defense, though, from the Philadelphia Eagles has been excellent. I mean, you got some former Georgia Bulldogs up there up front with Jalen Carter and Jordan there. What do you call it? Jordan Davis. Sorry about that. He's a guy that was out there in the middle. These are two guys that I was really hoping that the Pittsburgh Steelers would pick up. They end up going to the Philadelphia Eagles. They've made their presence known. They have a stout rotation there for the defensive line. Depth is definitely something for them, and I think also the same thing can be said for the Steelers. Now the Steelers have gone a little bit thin because of injuries. Over the first part of the season, Fautanu, Larry Njoku's now gone down. Montravius Adams kind of went down on the defensive side. On the offensive side, James Daniels also. I already spoke about Fautanu. Sayumalu went down for a little bit as well. James Daniels, I don't know if I said Sayumalu first. I meant James Daniels. He's out for the season. Sayumalu went down for a significant amount of time. Calvin Anderson was a guy that replaced some of the offensive linemen when they went out. He's out on IR. So, quite a bit of injuries off the offensive line. But up into that, coming into the season and being the reason that the Steelers are both 10 and or the Steelers are 10-2, 10-3. That tells me that, the depth behind what we thought of the offensive line was there is just now it's down to just the depth. So, the Steelers can't afford to lose any more players. I think Ryan McCollum played admirably in replace of Frazier, but Frazier, who's now kind of getting back into the groove of things, is obviously the better football player. And I'm excited about their future, but for today or this week, that's going to be a scary matchup for the Pittsburgh Steelers. These are two teams that are going in the same direction, that are traveling in the same trajectory, going upwards. The 11-2 Philadelphia Eagles that are coming off of 9 straight wins, the Steelers who have won 7 of the last 8 or something like that themselves. And I just feel that this is going to be a really good game, a good game to watch. And although it doesn't mean as much as it would as if the Steelers were playing, the Ravens or something like that. I mean, this game here would spark and create the first round playoff position. I mean, for a team that wasn't expected to win half of their games, to be this early in the season and potentially, clinching a playoff spot is huge, in my opinion. All right, let's talk about some things that need to happen for the Pittsburgh Steelers to win. They need to win the turnover battle, which is going to be tough. Jalen Hurts doesn't really turn the ball over too much. Some pressure from the outside, maybe some force strip sacks going to help up with that. I think we're going to need to see a little bit more of Jalen Warren than Najee Harris in this game. Jalen is a little bit more shiftier. He can get in and out of some smaller places. He's a little bit quicker, has a little bit more explosion and burst to get to the next level. And I think when it comes to the speed and the defense of the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm not sure if Najee Harris is the best fit. Now, I'm not asking that it be a tremendous amount. I'm thinking maybe 55, 45, 60, 40, somewhere around there in favor of Jalen Warren, my mistake. I think that would be a good place to be at there. And I think that I think Jalen Warren is going to get, just maybe have a little bit more success. And I think that can lead up to a Najee Harris coming in towards the middle of the second half, towards the end of the game, and really, being there the entire game, but like really starting to force the ball in that time frame. Once the defense is tired and been chasing down Jalen Warren for most of the game, now they got to deal with a fresh Najee Harris coming in with some good legs. It'll be. I think that would be the way to go there. I think that's what's going to need to happen if the Steelers end up winning this game. Becoming very predictable, going, first down run, second long run, stuff like that is definitely not going to be beneficial for this team. That's the one thing I think that they definitely can't go back to, because against a rushing defense like the Philadelphia Eagles and their entire defense, they are the first-ranked defense in the league for a reason. Putting yourself in bad spots by like third and longs, stuff like that, obvious throwing situations. That's not a great formula to win. So I think they're going to have to continue to keep the foot on the gas on this one, just like they've done in the last couple of weeks with the last couple of teams that they've played. I think they'll be all right there. And lastly, I think that if the Steelers are going to win, they're going to need the tight ends to show up here. I want to see Darnell Washington get some more action, Pat Freiermuth as well. The wide receivers, they're going up against a stout secondary. I think if we can get a mismatch between the Steelers tight ends, one of the bigger ones against a linebacker, or even if they're out there in space with somebody larger on them, these are athletic tight ends. Even Darnell Washington, especially for his size, you get him in space with a safety or a defensive back who's half his size. I like that matchup. I think this is going to be a very tough game in the end. Right now the Pittsburgh Steelers are 5.5-point dogs. I'm not surprised by that, to be honest with you. I'm not surprised that they're underdogs. A little bit surprised about the point margin. They're saying that it's going to be more than a field goal to win this game. I'm not necessarily saying that that's the case either. I do think this is going to be a very tough game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think the over-under is like 43. So for my prediction, and don't crucify me in the comment section, but I'm going to have to go with the Eagles on this game here. Now, I do think that the Steelers end up covering, or not covering. I think they end up winning with the points. I think the score here is going to be something like 24-21. 24-27, something like that, in favor of the Eagles. If George Pickens and Deshaun Elliott were playing in this game, I think it would be flipped around. I think the Steelers would have had more opportunity to win. But I really actually do like what the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing with these two players. For the first time in a long time that I can remember, this team is looking for the possibility of a run in the future in the playoffs, and they're playing as if they're going to be in contention in the playoffs. And again, if they win, they already got a ticket to the dance. But in previous years, it's always been they have to win now. They have to win this every game. And that has become a situation where you end up with some players that are hurting when you kind of need them the most and things of that nature. But to be honest, if they rested those players earlier on in the season or during those other moments, because of how lackluster the offense has been and how close games were, the Steelers really couldn't afford to lose any games. So every game was almost like a playoff game in the past. This time they can plan for the future, say, all right, we're going to rest the guys here now, and let them be available for the Ravens game, where that game decides the division. No bigger game than that. So in the end, I think the Steelers are going to end up winning. I think that I would pick the over in this one. I'm going to go 27-24 Eagles. I do think it would be different. It'd be the other way around if it was Deshaun and George Pickens in. Hey, every time I've picked them, I've been wrong. So I picked them every time I picked the Steelers to lose, I've been wrong. I'm hoping that happens today. Give us a little bit of reverse juju, good luck type of thing. But it's going to be a good game. Check it out. I'll be back here on The Hangover on Monday with Shannon White. You don't want to miss that. Make sure you do everything you need to do. Like, subscribe, comment, everything else. 5-star rating. But with that being said, guys, I'll be back on Monday on The Hangover. Peace.